Howdy YouTube folks, it's your friendly girl Ellen from Ellen's Life. I thought I would bring you another video. Let me just get one more drink of water here. And I was thinking I would bring this video because I've really been in the inspiration mood. And I thought this would be a good video topic. And so let me get into some backstory of this video. So, like I said, I've really been in an inspirational mood, and I don't believe I've done a video on this, but I've been working on, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Let me see if I can pan. And then on the floor, hopefully you can see that and not the kitty litter box. Excuse that, that's for my cat at night. It's usually in a different area, and this just to clarify, and I don't keep it in here, but at night I do, so she has a place to go, so she doesn't have to go outside at night, because it gets really cold during the winter months here in New England, up in the Northeast Kingdom, United States. So yeah. Anyways, so as you saw, and let me just readjust this a little bit more. There we go. As you saw, I've been working on mixers, if you saw that, and also radios. So I'm getting another transoceanic radio. So I've been trying to do those, and I will clarify before I get even further into this, is that I may make videos on this, but that is going to be my new hobby. And so I think this would be a good topic for a video that I don't believe I've touched on, but I feel like this could be a very inspirational video in some way, because I believe if you're having mental health issues of any kind, and say you're just dealing with things in life, as everyone does, and you need things to keep you happy in life, in your spare time, definitely it's whatever it is. I think everyone should have some sort of hobby of some kind, something they really like to do. I have multiple hobbies, if you haven't noticed, of my stuff. And for a while, working on old garden tractors was kind of like a hobby a little bit, but not really, because I've mainly only ever done it out of necessity, as I've mentioned in here. In the past, that's how I learned how to work on small engines and engines in general. And like a lot of garden tractors was out of necessity. Yes, I had a business years ago. Sadly, I was not on YouTube when I had that business, because who knows, maybe if I had been on YouTube back then, during my business, you could have seen a lot of the tractors I got. And back when I was in business doing it, I was mainly just stripping parts off of tractors, going through the parts, and kind of just doing more of like selling of parts versus actually getting machines fully functioning to resell as mowers and stuff. Because I found that my niche, because by that time a lot of the vintage stuff that I was working on, people needed parts for, and companies like Briggs & Stratton were starting to phase out of some of their parts. As those of you familiar with Briggs & Stratton's closed down and rebuy out, and obviously they're going to open back up in some form, I think. But anyways, so yeah, there was that issue, and then I was starting to get into the parts, and by the point of me stopping working on small engines was, as a business, was when I started to realize people didn't really want those old tractors anymore because of the scarcity of finding parts for them. And more of them were going up for sale than they were actually being kept. So that's what swayed me to get out of it. But anyways, so yeah, that was more of a necessity. So it never really was a hobby, but I've always had other hobbies. And like fixing vintage appliances is something I've always enjoyed. Collecting country vinyl, stuff like that. Artwork, I really love making artwork. If I haven't showed it, I believe I did on my Instagram. If you can see it, it's the square one. That's blue and I call it the inner workings of a snowflake. Like the nuclei of the snowflake is that round, dark, like slightly lighter blue hue inside that round area, and then it's kind of like the little tentacles of the snowflake. Was where my mind was going with that, and my inspiration for that. That's not the first painting I've ever done, but that was um, the second painting I had done in years. Because the first painting I had done in multiple years, I had ended up gifting to somebody on their, I believe it was on their birthday, and it was an abstract painting, and it could be kind of whatever you wanted it, but my vision for it was like sailing ships on an ocean. That's kind of what I got from it after it was done, but it was multicolored, and I forget if I've done any Instagram stuff on it, if you follow my Instagram or Facebook. But that was the first one in a long time, because back in high school I actually took an art class. When I took an art class in high school, it wasn't really by choice. It was kind of like, oh, you need this to be thrown in as an extracurricular, because I really wanted to do woodworking when I was younger. Because I've always kind of enjoyed doing, like, making stuff out of wood when I was younger. I always enjoyed that, and I still kind of do a little bit, not a whole ton. But, yeah, that's also another hobby of mine that I'm thinking about getting into, because I have plans to, for any of the hobbyists into fixing vintage wood cabinet radios, mostly the shelf models, the ones that would sit on the shelves. I want to collect a whole bunch of the earlier ones, the tube ones with the thick wood, and make my own cabinet kits for people who may have good chassis but their cabinets are not in the greatest shape. They can buy the kit, that's the replicated cabinet, or they can buy different parts and molding pieces to replace some of the moldings and refurbish their own cabinet. So that's what I'm going to try to do, and I'm going to try to get multiple different models of those shelf cabinet radios, as many as I can, and just copy off the that still are semi pristine, even if they have dings, and try to my best to copy off all the molding materials and panels to size, so I can make those and see if that will be something that people would want to buy. But that's also another hobby of mine, a semi hobby. Really, what got me into woodworking was, I will say this before I continue further with it. I guess I'm getting probably a slight bit more in depth than I really need to, but was my dad's father. When I was really young, I remember sitting on his lap, and he would make birdhouses out of wood because he had all the woodworking equipment, and he'd make some immaculate birdhouses. That was his retirement hobby before he was no longer able to do a bunch of things towards the end. That was his retirement hobby before then, as he had retired. And his plant, he had always made some nice birdhouses, and I think he sold a few here and there to people. But yeah, so that kind of got me inspired into that. Also, as you know, another hobby of mine is music. And I have many other hobbies: poetry, writing, stuff like that, sewing. I want to get more into sewing. So basically what I'm trying to say in this is, if there's a hobby in mind and you really want to do it, I think you should just go to it, do that hobby, and just enjoy it. The one thing I will say, and I've noticed this because I was watching a YouTube video just not that long ago that kind of inspired me to make this video a little bit, is the one thing I will say, and I guess it's just my opinion, is just to be careful and make sure your hobby doesn't get out of hand. And I know that it may be an enjoyment thing, but like I was watching this guy take a video game thing that apparently if they're restored, they're like this like Nintendo game thing is worth upwards of $2,000. It was like an arcade system, but it had been outside in some like a tree line, because when it broke, the previous people who owned it, who he bought it off of, the guy he bought it off of, said that when when him and his roommates, because I think it was roommates is the way he described it, um anyways, had ditched it in like their backyard tree line when it stopped working on something. And to me, when you find stuff like that that's rusted out like that, honestly, in my opinion, I know I get it, it's they're kind of rare, but it's like, when do you draw the line of it? Is that really feasible for your hobby? And so that's kind of why I say, also on the flip side, to be careful and maybe realize when your hobby could be getting a little out of hand and when you could become hoarder. Because I've also in recent years realized that I have a bit of hoarder tendencies when it comes to it. So I've tried to make my hobby work for myself. Like when I'm doing radios or vintage steam irons, if there's certain ones I need for my collection, that's fine. But if I get in duplicates that I am going to cycle through them as I work on them and get rid of ones that I absolutely don't need, that aren't relevant to my current, because of the space that I live in and the income I live on. So I'm also going to touch on something else going with that too, is within saying that, that's where you could make your hobby into like a small little hobby business. Like, for instance, when I'm working on, currently what I'm trying to do is get all the stuff I have done now, except for one more piece that I'm getting, which is another Zenith transoceanic radio, because I have one down on the floor. I believe I did a video on it. That I want to try to get both of them working, so I have one for myself for now, unless I ever decide to sell it. And the one I keep for myself is the one that I have now that I accidentally broke the handle on, but the other one I'm going to try to sell. And that's where you could really, like, say if you had a hobby and you really liked making jewelry. Here's another example, jewelry, for say, like you find stuff and make jewelry and you go to the craft fairs and sell it. Maybe a hobby that will help you if you're someone like me who tries to live a minimalist lifestyle, may be on a set income and may only have X amount of space to work with, and I'm worried that maybe your hobby might get out of hand and you might end up with more stuff than you ever do anything with, and then your hobby becomes overwhelming. That's how you can make it. And that's what I'm trying to do with my like electronic repair, is as I fix a whole bunch of them, the ones I want to sell that I'm not going to keep, I will put them up for sale, and once I've sold those items and I find more, I can cycle them in until I can, at least until I can have a more space to function. And I'm going to be working on my shop so I can open that space to do that, because I plan on eventually finishing off the shop, and I'll make a whole update on that, how I build the shelving that I'm going to put up, and hopefully, and all that, because I do want to make that a hobby of mine, a business, because I think it'd be a good little side hobby business, selling vintage appliance parts and old mixer parts, radio parts, TV parts, maybe servicing, like I said, maybe servicing a few of the radios, mixers, and portable TVs, portable record players, shelf model wood cabinet radios, stuff like that I get. Those, it's going to be mostly small appliances in this, and it's going to be hand and stand mixers, and countertop stand mixers like you would have in a residential kitchen. Nothing newer than 69 preferably, but if I get in scratch and dent stuff. And I think that will be a good way where I can make my hobby be a moneymaker. So the thing I can say to you folks is that if you can find a hobby and say maybe you're really invested in that hobby, and like I said, jewelry, and maybe you could make some money selling your wares wherever you sell it. Like, for instance, if you were making jewelry and selling it at the craft fairs, or you had items you liked to make on your sewing machine or crocheted at craft fairs, to do it, because it's also a good way, if you're on a fixed income, to bring a little more profit into a little more income into your lifestyle. And as of current, I'm on a fixed income, because of still looking for work. But obviously, I guess I won't touch too much on that because of the political standpoint, and this could be more for video, but obviously I'm going to be getting a job, hopefully, as I've stated, this year, because of our lovely new president, who is making it oh so hard for us less fortunate ones to be able to survive in this world, and helping those of the more rich class live their lovely utopian economy lifestyle, and turn us all into utopians, and make us suffer and pay more. And yes, at one point there was a point where the middle class was very, in my opinion, better off. But if you look at a standpoint of the 1950s versus today, and prior to the 1950s, especially in World War II era, you'll probably find that today is starting to turn out pretty much like those eras, because most people who lived in rural America in the 1950s and prior had next to nothing for money and couldn't even afford new items. But back in those times, when people lived in cities that had money and were spending all this money, were mostly middle class people and not rich people. And they felt, because World War II had ended, that, for those of you who are familiar and have done your history, will know that a lot of people felt, well, because I can afford it and I'm middle class and I'm working class, that I need to buy all these new fancy furnitures, these new fancy cars and stuff like that, when I can afford them, because I'm helping my economy. But if you look at it in the way I view it, it was no different then than it is now, with rich people staying rich and claiming they want to help the economy when there's no real jobs left like that anymore. And even back then, most people of middle class were more well off than a poor person, but they were still working class people, and they couldn't always afford to go out and buy that stuff. And here they were, taking their paycheck for the next month, paying installments until they paid their new television, for example, or their new stereo record player combo console off, for example, in their living room. So yeah, but anyways, so obviously I will be looking for work, but yeah, so all I can say is, if you're living like me and say you know you're in between looking for work and stuff, again, making your hobby just pay for itself. But say if you've got a job and you've got a little extra spending money and you have it saved and you don't really need to do that, you can just pick a regular hobby. Like, heck, another good hobby that I also like to do myself is puzzles from time to time. I do them for fun, and then sometimes when I get certain puzzles, I may want to frame them just for my display purposes, but because I've had a few. But there are some puzzles I've done where I've ended up taking them back apart, because I either will do them again or I will gift them to somebody that I know would, their kids or something may want to do that puzzle, or they may want to do that puzzle, that I know would be into puzzles during like Christmas or something. I find that's a good way to reuse an item like that, so you can constantly cycle through, so you have space for new puzzles that you may want to do. There's only one puzzle so far in my collection, maybe two, but definitely one that I would never get rid of, because I picked it up at a thrift store. And the reason I will never get rid of it, and probably never put it together to see if it's fully complete, is because I really like Vermont Life magazine. And for those of you who live around the area and know what Vermont Life magazine is, because obviously I've probably just stated where I live in my state. I try not to say what state I live in as much, just because I feel it's a safer thing to do. But for those of you familiar with Vermont Life magazine, know what I'm talking about. I'm very an avid collector of those magazines, and I very much like the different things. And when I found a Vermont Life puzzle, I had to have it because it's part of my personal collection, and it'll probably never be assembled or used. It's been opened before, but I'm just gonna leave it as I found it, as a display collector piece. If I find more of them, I'm definitely getting them. And yes, as you can tell, I was very sad when I heard that Vermont Life magazine was no longer going to be, because they could not find anybody to make Vermont Life magazine continue, which was very sad for all of us people who enjoyed reading the Vermont Life magazine. Anyways, yeah, so enough about that. But yeah, so there's another example of a hobby that you could do to kind of pass your time. And again, writing and poetry, video gaming, that's something I do a little bit of. Recently, I haven't been really into video gaming because I'm the type of person that, because I have multiple hobbies I kind of have to be inspired at that moment. Just like I haven't really listened to vinyl that much lately, because I also too have to be inspired at that moment for that vinyl, for wanting to listen to that. But tomorrow I could wake up and say, hey, I want to listen to some Pierce Web, or Web Pierce. That's how I meant to say it. Or maybe listen to some Red Sovine, or Jim Reeves, or Johnny Cash. It's all in how I feel. Jerry Lee Lewis, Wanda Jackson, because obviously I'm in the country, so that's with me. And for some of you, you might find that, though. You might find that you may have multiple different hobbies you like, and you may have to be re-inspired to get back into them. Especially if you're someone who may have autism, like I have been diagnosed with, because I have been diagnosed with autism. That may be a part of your autism, where you have multiple hobbies and multiple things you like to get into, and you may, like I said, need to be inspired to do that one that time, because I haven't painted in a while either, but that's because I haven't been inspired to get back into it yet. But from doing this video, I am almost inspired to do a little more painting. So who knows, maybe in 2-3 days I might do some more painting, make another painting. I'm mostly of an abstract painter, but I'm still kind of trying to rehone my painting skills, because I was really good in high school, and really good when I didn't want to be a painter, but as I've gotten older, I've really wanted to get back into painting. So it's weird. Like back then I didn't really want to paint, but now that I'm older, I really want to do painting and stuff like that, So it's weird how that worked out. But yet back then, I took a lot of my painting skills for if there were, when I was, say, like in the lawnmower business of lawnmower parts, and there was a select garden tractor that maybe I was going to fix up to help my grandparents with mowing the lawn with, because I was living with my grandparents here in this place at that time. I took my painting skills that I had to restoring those and making them cosmetic, not only mechanically but cosmetically nice looking, when I felt like doing cosmetic restorations. Because I can remember coming back to me now, like a oddball tractor that was made by the Gilson Corporation, for those of you who are familiar, from the 70s. But it was a really oddball looking one, and I was restoring that. I can remember when I was doing all the paint work for that, and then doing an engine swap, because I think I needed to swap an engine out of that one, because I couldn't figure out the electrical on the one in there. So I put a pull start one I had gotten from a guy that I had known, that was lived in the village of where I went to grade school. And I remember buying a lot of stuff off of the old guy. He was in his 80s. I want to say he was 82 or 83 years old at the time. And I would just go there quite frequently buying stuff from him. Lawnmowers, push mowers, parts and pieces. Anytime I needed a starter or a carburetor, a Chocomatic carburetor, I was, right at it. But yeah. So I did take my painting skills to that. And so you might find that too, actually. If you say when you were younger, you may have been into something or did something that maybe you weren't that into, but then later in life you might revisit it and find, hey, maybe this is something I'm into. So yeah, just always keep that in mind as well. And what else can I say? I think that's pretty much touches it. Um, yeah. Also, again, like I said, poetry, writing, those are all good things. There's so many. Heck, when I was younger, another hobby that I haven't done in years that I also kind of was a little bit into, and I know some people do before I close this video out, that I just thought of as coin collecting. I wasn't heavy into coin collecting like my grandparents were, but when I was younger, I would like save wheat pennies and stuff I would get from the store. And then later on, as I started to get kind of sick of collecting coins, I guess, a little bit, when I needed some of the wheat pennies, I would use them down at the store, or I used them down at the store, I think, as change. So it kind of slowly just weeded out. I still have a few coins I've gotten recently, like wheat pennies I've found recently when I got change back from the store. So yeah, there's another hobby. I just liked to, especially when I was younger, and I've always been into old stuff. So when I was younger, I would just collect anything and everything antique. And I loved picking. So definitely picking is a good hobby. A good hobby slash business. Being a picker, like the American Pickers, getting stuff at a deal because it's your because if you really like something like that, that can really be your passion. You can look at it as a business standpoint, but you can also look at it as a hobby as well, because it's your passion, getting those old items and saving them and rescuing them for other people to enjoy from collectors' barns and places that may want to sell them to you and are willing to work with you on prices so you can make a profit off of that item for your antique business. Yeah, so anyways, I think I should close this video now because I think that pretty much touches it. Like I said, just if you can find a hobby, please do it. I highly recommend I highly recommend that you please do that, because especially if you're going through mental health things and things like that, and you're just trying to get your mental health in check because you've spent a lot of years dwelling and living in just one area. Getting your mind off the dwelling is what you need to do, in my opinion. And not only hobby, but obviously I recommend going to therapy as well. But a hobby is a good way to have things to do to keep your mind preoccupied, so you're not always so if there's times when you're alone and you're not around somebody, you're not always dwelling on anything and everything that you possibly did, that you look back and go, oh, why did I do that? Why was I that way? Because I still feel that way sometimes, and when I talk about it, admittably, sometimes I feel like I'm going to get a little choked up when I'm talking about it, and I kind of do now, because I feel like when I say it and I know that I've done things, it's almost like my spirit and my soul feels so regretful for the things they did. So that's why I'm saying you just gotta get your mind off that stuff and just know that you made those mistakes and those things, as I've stated in other videos, and just find things to make yourself happy in the now, to make you better for the rest of your life, so that way you can leave this world knowing that you left some sort of impact, no matter what it is. And hope that you've left a big enough impact on people as you can. As humans, I feel we're always gonna be critical of each other, no matter what. Of ourselves is what I should say. We're always gonna be critical of ourselves, is what I mean to say. So it just is what it is. That's who we are, and I feel like I feel like it's just a normal reaction to say to yourself, oh, well, I wish I could do this, or I wish I was better at that, and just always critique yourself because because, like, for example, artists, you know, they're always critiquing themselves. They're always like, oh, I feel I could have done this or that, even though their piece might be just as perfect as anyone could ever want it. So, anyways, as always, keep your heads up, stay strong, all that kind of jazz. Have an excellent time, whatever it is, wherever you are. And as always, sunshines, unicorns, and rainbows. And I'm going to close this video out now because it has been a long enough video as it is. And I could go on further, but this is where it needs to end, I think. And also, before I close it out, as always, you don't have to, but I like to state this every once in a while. If you wouldn't mind liking, commenting, and subscribing if you really enjoyed my videos. And hitting that notification bell if you wanted to. You could do full notification, half notification, or if you just want no notification whatsoever of my videos, that's totally understandable. Again, as I've stated before, and I'm going to say it because I like to say it every once in a while, especially if there's new people coming to my channel, that I don't want you to feel forced to watch my videos, because that wasn't the intention of my videos to ever make me famous. Obviously, I know my audio is probably still pretty poor. I have a kind of raspy voice, which I don't think helps. I've really tried to work on my speech and make my videos more audio quality. And anyways, so I will see you in the next one, YouTube folks.